Hi, everybody. Welcome to Paranormal Among Us. Have a great show lined up for you tonight. The legendary Barton Nunnelley is joining us today. He has his podcast, Inhumanoids with Barton Nunnelley. I'll have the link later on. You guys can go check that out. Make sure you subscribe to it. Fantastic show. He's been doing this. He's a great guy. Just met him. We're talking backstage. Heard a ton of great things about him, and looking forward to talking with him here tonight. But before we get to that, I want to remind you that May 18th, we will be down in Ashmore, Illinois, put on by After Dark Paranormal and Blondes in the Booze. Rob and Terry, this is an old one. We have one person that we need to add on there. Rob and Terry is going to be there. Josh Hurd, myself, and Letitia Nunnley is going to be there as well. So make sure that I need to get that new banner up here. I don't have it on me, but trust me, according to Krista, she's going to be on there. So $85 per ticket includes the speaker portion of the day, pizza dinner, and then the overnight ghost hunt, which will be a blast. I hope it will be. I don't think I have anything else. This Saturday, I'm not sure what's going to be on the air. I don't know if I'm going to be doing a live show or if I'm going to have a rerun out there, but we will have something out this Saturday. So make sure that you check me out at my normal time, 8 o'clock on Saturdays. So without further ado, I would love to bring out my guest tonight, Barton Nunnelley. There he is. Barton, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Glad you're feeling better. We were supposed to do this last Tuesday, and both you and Letitia were out sick. So I'm glad everybody's feeling good out there.
Appreciate that.
Let's, before we get into everything else, let's talk about your show real quick. For those of you who might not know about Barton's show, it's Inhumanoids with Barton Nunnelley. I got it on the bottom. Those of you who haven't already, make sure you go over there and check it out and make sure you subscribe to it. How long have you been doing that over there?
Just about 15 months, Paul. Yeah, almost
That's amazing. A year and a half. And we were talking backstage that the YouTube stuff, it's a lot of work. But but I love doing this. This is fun stuff.
Right. I always have a lot of fun. It's just, when you have a day job and you gotta work all day, and then you gotta come home and work for your channel, and it was hard enough just making videos because I've never done that before. Right. I had to be basically taught how to do that by my good friend down in LBL, Martin Nachek. So yeah, and then we started the membership deal, and that was like, oh my goodness. So now now the work is double. So, you always have to have extra content for your members, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want them to be paying $2.99 or whatever a month and not get anything extra. So yeah, I try to do extra for them. And of course, there's always the regular podcast for my subscribers. Yeah.
Right. What made you get into this?
Well, that's a good question because I never once ever dreamed that I'd be doing YouTube. Mm-hmm. I never had any aspirations of being a public speaker at all. But I was talked into it by a couple of friends, including Josh Turner, who finally convinced me to give it a try. And here we are, 16 months later, and it's going pretty good. It was slow there at first, and really wasn't. Aside from the fact that I get to be able to tell everybody the truth, and reach a lot of people, it was really hard. There was a time where I thought I would probably not make it and give up. It was just, but then Krista, Michael Tweedy, and Brandy Hollywood, I call her. They talked us in. Letitia and I started doing live streams, and that's where you really have your fun at, right? You get to interact with the people.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't get to do that just making video drops.
Yeah.
And it takes me about 2 days to do one video. So Still really slow, but I'm learning.
Oh, gotta learn somehow, and
Yeah.
yeah.
One of these days I'll be as good as, some of my other YouTubing friends, but right now I'm just, I'm raw and it's real and it's all true. I don't read an email from any. I ask my viewers to send me their encounters, but I don't just read them. I have to talk to them and make sure that they're on the
Yeah.
level. I'm not trying to pull my leg or just trying to get some fiction read on a YouTube channel. So each one of my emails are vetted, so I know that the people that send them in are telling me the truth. So I always tell them, if you're going to send me an encounter, some of your stories or whatever, just make sure you put your phone number in there. So yeah, it's been going really good. The good Lord's been blessing me with so many people that have encounters and experiences that are way beyond the pale of your ordinary YouTube fare, right?
hmm And it's amazing that there's not a whole lot of places where people might feel safe to tell their story. I mean, um, I can only speak for my show, and I know your show and Blondes and Booze and Tex and BMR. It's
Mhm.
all it's a safe place. I mean, there's no judging, and no one's gonna make fun of you, and you know
Right.
people just need that outlet, I think.
They do, Paul. And I've had people that after they talk to me start breaking down and crying, and they say it feels so good to finally get this off my chest. I had no one to talk to and no one that I thought would believe me until you came along, and it makes me feel like I'm making some kind of difference out there. It's a big world, and it's hard to make a difference with anything. So
Yeah.
when you have people telling you things like that, then it makes it worthwhile.
And I was a big into UFO phenomenon and everything years ago, and still am. And I've noticed that over the last 10, 15 years, people are just starting to come out. And from what I've heard in the past, where commercial airline pilots, military pilots who have seen UFOs while they're flying, they're afraid to come out and talk about it because they might get ridiculed or fired or dishonorably discharged or something like that. But
Sure.
now
Well,
things are starting to come out, and it seems like it's with almost everything in the paranormal and cryptid world.
right. Well, I don't call them cryptids myself, Paul. I call them inhumanoids. And
Mhm.
that's because cryptids are simply natural animals that are rumored to exist but have yet to be classified by science, right?
Mhm.
And Bigfoot and Dogman, they're not animals. They're partly human. So by definition, there's no such thing as a partly human or semi-human cryptid. So I come up with the inhumanoids, and that's a much more accurate descriptor of what we're dealing with. And you mentioned the UFO subject. I see online every day. Oh, this is going to be the year that we have disclosure. And I tell everyone, I'm like, what are you talking about? We've already had it. And they're like, what?
Mhm.
Last year, the Pentagon came out with a news brief that said UFOs are real and they pose a threat to national security. Now, if that's not disclosure, then I don't know what is.
Right.
Every news outlet ran a story on that, but they just, I don't know, Paul, they're just not paying attention very, very much anymore, it seems to me.
You know, I kind of I'm in that camp that I'm not paying attention much because you turn on the news every night and it's murder, suicide, crash, you know,
Yeah.
political, whatever. And I just, I'll turn I'll turn on YouTube and watch something else on instead of watching the news. I should be
Right.
watching the news more, but
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I don't watch the news much anymore either, just because of the reasons that you stated. And, you
yeah,
know, people say, oh, this news is no good. MSNBC is no good. CNN's no good. Fox is no good. Well, they don't realize that they're all owned by the same people, right?
hmm
So what they're doing is playing one person against the next, and through the political angle. And I don't believe in red or blue. I just believe in being an American and being honest and being true. And
yeah.
like I say, it's just, yeah, TV's a wasteland, especially the news. So usually when I turn on the TV, it's on some YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm. And I have what, 5 or 6 TVs throughout the house, and most of my stuff is going to end up being sports or some kind of paranormal program that's gone or something, or YouTube on
Yeah,
one of them. So
right.
it's interesting. Um, all right, you have. I wanted to talk about your books. You have 4 books out now, correct?
Correct. And they're all available
Um,
on Amazon in both um, the
audio.
printed format and the audio book version. So yeah, you guys go check them out if you like. It's one of the things that I'm known for is my first 2 books, Mysterious Kentucky and the Inhumanoids, which everybody seemed to really enjoy reading. And the greatest accomplishment you can have as an author, Paul, is to write a book that someone wants to read twice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been really lucky there, and people place these books above most other Fortean works. And I've had some people say I read the Inhumanoids once a year, which is an amazing compliment because it's 450 pages long. So
Wow. Now, are all these your encounters?
no, sir. My encounters, I included them a lot of them in Mysterious Kentucky, but the Inhumanoids is like a history of these inhumanoid entities from biblical times right up to the present day.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm working on a book now that's has to do with my family's experience in 1975 when I was 9 years old in Spotsville, Kentucky. So hopefully I'll get that one done soon, and people will be able to know the full story, which I've written about the Spotsville Monster in a couple of my books, but never anything so detailed as I'm going into with
Mm-hmm.
this book. Through luck and determination, I was able to interview several families that lived in the same house before my family did, and they all had some kind of terrifying experience with these creatures, and it goes all the way back to 1935, and I'm sure it would have went back further than that if I could have found someone that lived there before then. But
Mm-hmm.
that's where the trail ended. So
Well, let's talk about your childhood experience a little bit, if you don't mind.
sure. Well, it all started. It started 4 years before the Spotsville monster
Mm-hmm.
experiences, and it started. We was living in an isolated house down by the Green River, really, really close to the Green River. We were dirt poor, and we had a little 19-inch black and white television set. We would set it in the kitchen. We used the kitchen as the gathering room, right? And we were all sitting there one night, and my oldest sister, who was I think 7 at the time, something like that. Yeah, she was closest to the window, and she jumped up and screamed and told Dad that she saw a monster looking in the window. So of course, Dad jumped up and got the 12 gauge, and him and Mom ran outside, and they saw this figure running down one of the old dirt roads leading down into the lower fields next to the river. And my mom said it looked like a really tall man wearing a one-piece brown suit. So my dad shot 3 or 4 times, and he thought that was it. And wouldn't have to worry about that one again. And a couple months later, everybody was in bed, and except for my older sister, and my mother and my older sister were looking through a Sears catalog, looking to find a Christmas present for her. And so when she finally got done and she went to leave the room, she noticed a red glow coming in through the window. So she walked over to the window and looked out at it, and much to her surprise, saw a disc-shaped flying saucer, red in color, descending from the sky and getting ready to land behind one of the old barns that we had out there. And of course, she freaked out and ran in and told Dad, and was hollering and screaming and everything. And Dad told her, "Hey, listen, get all the kids up and get them dressed and set them at the kitchen table." She says, "Why? We need to leave right now." He said, "Well, if there really is a rocket ship out there, we don't want them to know that we've seen them." And he said, whatever you do, don't turn on a light. Don't turn on any lights. So
Yeah.
we did that, and it got us all set up at the kitchen table. And she says, why are we sitting here like this? Why aren't we leaving? And my dad said, well, every night about this time, it was about 10 o'clock. He said, every night about this time, a barge comes down the Green River, and it pulling on that barge horn and sweeping that spotlight up through the trees, right? And he said, when that happens, we'll make a run for it. We hadn't been sitting there for about 5 minutes when, sure enough, we heard that barge horn sound off, and the searchlight came sweeping up through the trees around the house and everything. And Dad said, okay, now let's go. So we all ran to the car and sped out of there and never went back. That was my first introduction, I guess you'd say, into the unknown. So we moved to town for 4 years and moved back to the country in 1975, which also happened to be on a little isolated spot of land, a small country farmhouse near the Green River. And I'll be damned if things didn't start happening there as well. So,
wow.
My dad, he'd raise chickens, so he had a bunch of them that he made a little incubator and hatched a bunch of chickens. So by springtime, we had a bunch of chickens, and to go in the hen house and lay eggs and everything. That's one of the things that you really need if you're a poor person living in the country. There's really three things that you really need. That's a good 12-gauge shotgun, a good vicious guard dog, and a bunch of chickens. So that spring, his chickens started coming up missing, and it was quite a bit of concern to him. And then my mom saw this large, hairy creature run through one of the side fields that was out planting the vegetable garden, and it was getting late, and dusk had already settled in, almost dark, and she saw this figure run and jump across this fence out to the side of the house. And that's when it all started. And what followed was 11 months of pretty much terror from these huge, hairy, Bigfoot type creatures.
Mm.
So little
You
did
said
I
11
know,
months of terror?
11.
Wow.
We loved that house. It was perfect for us kids. My older brother, he's older than me by a year. We had started arrowhead hunting and artifact hunting at the previous house by the river, and that really got in our system. We loved doing that, and this place was full of arrowheads and artifacts, and they had fruit trees everywhere, wild strawberries, and it was just a perfect location for us. But unfortunately, something else lived there, right?
Wow.
So we ended up evacuating the house 11 months later, much wiser than we moved into that place. We knew that after that, our mother and father didn't tell us that monsters didn't exist anymore. You know how you tell your kids that they get scared at night and they think there's a monster underneath their bed or what have you, and you'd say, no, monsters aren't real. They don't exist. Well, I'm here to tell everyone that they do exist. And when you tell your children that, you might think you're doing them a favor, but you're really misleading them. So I had 3 kids of my own, and I never once told them that monsters didn't exist, because I know that they do, Paul.
Yeah. Well, you've seen them, yeah.
Yes. Everyone in the family saw these creatures.
Wow.
So yeah, we knew they were real, and
Yeah.
They seemed to have a particular animosity toward animals, especially dogs. We had 2 of the most vicious dogs that you could ever want to own. Even our close family friends couldn't pull up in the driveway and get out of their car because our dogs would eat them up. They had to wait till mom or dad come out there and got the dogs off, called the dogs off, and then they could get out of their car. But we had a little piece of underpinning that was missing from the house right by the back doorsteps. And it was, I don't know, a couple feet wide, about 1.5 feet tall, whatever. And every time these monsters would come around, our 2 dogs, they wouldn't even so much as bark. They would run underneath the house, and Eventually, we learned that by listening for the dogs, when you hear their heads bumping up on the floorboards underneath our feet, when we heard that, we knew that the monsters were out there and they were coming.
Wow.
So pretty interesting. These things killed all the animals that we found were from the dogs. We found 8 or 9 dead dogs that summer. None of them belonged to us. They all belonged to the neighboring farms. But they would kill the dogs and bring them to our property and drop them either in our yard or in our fields. And every one of them was mutilated the exact same way. They were sliced, not ripped or torn or bit. They were sliced open from the neck down to the stomach, and all the soft tissue was removed. All the entrails were gone. The eyeballs were missing, and the tongues were missing on each of these carcasses. Were all exactly the same condition.
So,
and much as a fly would land on these things, Paul.
Yeah.
Old scavenger would touch them. The turkey vultures wouldn't eat them. The coyotes, not even a fly would land on them, and that's what really started tipping me off that, later on in life, as I was able to study about this stuff and put 2 and 2 together, I realized that these Inhumanoids were probably radioactive. They had some residual amount of radioactivity about them.
When you mentioned the mutilated dogs being put on your property, was there any blood around them on the ground when you saw? No blood?
No blood, no footprints, even in the fields. So it's almost like they were dropped from above, right?
So, yeah, that's okay. So, are you familiar with the show Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch?
Haven't watched the show, but I did read the book years and years ago. But I don't watch much TV, Paul.
Yeah.
I hear a lot about that show, but I can't really say that I've ever really watched it.
So on that show, I guess part of the ranch, for those of you watching and listening, they deal with cattle mutilation and other animal mutilation and stuff. And there's no blood found around these animals. And I remember one episode, they had a cow that was mutilated. And actually, there was a video of that cow like right before it died. And if you pan up into the sky, there was a saucer of some kind up there. So they ended up moving this cow away from the homestead and everything out into the field. And it remained there for a long time. Like you said, nothing touched it. So I'm wondering if that's some kind of if that's what happened to it, if it's aliens that abducted this cow or whatever, or if it's something else, an Inhumanoid.
Right. Well, there's only one reason I can think of that would make a fly not land and lay eggs on a piece of dead meat, and that's radioactivity. Now, we never actually saw these things kill the animals, but one night we had 5 or 6 people up on our roof, and half of them didn't believe what was going on, But it was 10 or 11 o'clock, and they were just about ready to give up and say the Spotswood monster was just lying or whatever. And they heard a dog yelp, and then this thing growled, to let out a big growl. And the woods were about 50 feet away from the house, the back of the house. And so everybody up on that roof just started opening fire, right? And they had rifles and shotguns with slugs. And it sounded like World War II up on the house. I remember it like it was yesterday, and I was 9 years old. They got so scared that they accidentally knocked the ladder down. One of the men fell off the roof and was beating at the front door trying to get somebody to let him in. But the next day we went out there and looking, because all those people shooting had to have hit something. Well, they didn't hit anything. There was no tracks. You could see where the bullets tore through the foliage. But the only thing that we found there was another body of a dead dog, and it was also mutilated. So, however that happened, that was really weird. And everyone that was on that roof left knowing for sure that we were telling the truth.
Right.
And the newspaper, they got a hold of us through the police band radio. My dad would it would get to be particularly bad, and then my dad would call the police, state police, to have them come escort us off the property.
Mm-hmm.
And they did that 3 or 4 times, and finally, uh, they told my dad, because this was happening once or twice a week, right? And they finally told him to stop calling them. They were not going to respond anymore to any more calls like that. And you got to keep in mind, this is a man he suffered from glaucoma, so he was mostly blind. He had 6 children and a wife, and you have the state police saying, "Hey, we're not going to come out there. Don't call us no more." Right? So
Mm-hmm.
it was really a conundrum. But luckily, my dad had met a fellow that lived a mile down the road from us, and they become real good friends. The fellow had come up one day early in the spring. He had been squirrel hunting down by the Green River, and excuse me, he had a squirrel in his sights and just about to pull the trigger, but he didn't know that something was behind him. Now, this guy, he had made a living as a big game hunter and tracker out west. So when he pulled that trigger, uh, whatever was behind him was so close that it could have reached out and touched him, because it took off and he could feel the wind from it taking off. And he spun around and saw this huge, dark, brownish, black colored bipedal animal running away, which he'd never seen before.
Wow.
And he thought, wow, I don't know what the heck that was, but he had heard that a family with 6 children had just moved into the old Hughes place. And so he thought, well, it's my Christian duty to go over there and warn these people of what I just saw, because this thing was huge. And that's how he met my dad and mom. I remember the day he walked across that field, and he had his 12 gauge broken down, slung over his left forearm, and he come walking up toward mom and dad with his hand up in the air, right? So that's how they met him, and luckily they hit it off and became fast friends almost immediately. And whenever something would happen, instead of calling police, this later on, of course, but instead of calling police, they would call him, and he would come. And he would escort us out and make sure we all got off the property, and we would go stay at my grandmother's for a day or two.
Right.
And of course, then we'd have to come right back and right back into it. And it's kind of funny. The police, when they responded, we'd be having all this kind of scary stuff happening, and Dad would call police, and they would come out with their sirens blazing and lights, blaring, and the monster would just slip into the woods, which was right back behind our house.
Mm-hmm.
And the police would act like they'd look around for a little bit and say, "No, we didn't see anything," or whatever. And then they would leave, and then when the police left, these creatures would come right back out. So it was a really
Wow.
scary time for me and my 6 brothers and 5 brothers and sisters. And
Yeah.
yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. And that's been almost 50 years ago now.
Wow. I mean, talk about a traumatic childhood. I mean, that's
Yeah,
incredible.
pretty traumatic.
Yeah.
But Paul, I never let it affect my love of the outdoors and my love of nature.
Yeah.
I've always been an outdoorsman. I love to hunt and fish and walk the creeks with my wife. And I just trust in the good Lord, have faith that the good Lord will protect me from these things. If He wanted me to be a victim of one of these things that would have happened in 1975, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. And if you let that fear, or whatever you want to call it, control your life, you're not going to get anything done. You're going to be
Right.
holed up in your house, and like you said, the good Lord's protecting you, and live your life, and things will
Yeah.
be fine. I mean, certainly be protected as well, just in case.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's amazing.
I hate to hear when somebody comes to me and they tell me that they've seen or had experiences with these inhumanoid creatures, and they say, "I'll never go in the woods again." I haven't
Yeah.
been in the woods in years, and I'll never go again. It really that's really sad. If you love it, God's creation, outdoors, then you should enjoy it and not let any of these things take that from you, because that's what they do. They feed on your fear.
Yeah.
If there were really actual creatures, Paul, 8 or 10 foot tall, they wouldn't have left any of that dog. All the
Right.
dogs would have had to be eaten. They would have to spend all their time uh, gathering calories to fuel such immense bulks,
Hmm.
such huge bodies. But they didn't. They just took the soft tissue and then they left the meat there. And we would get on the school bus twice a day and drive down that half-mile long gravel road. It was our driveway. And we'd see the carcasses of 2 or 3 dogs laying on the side of the road, and they would stay there for months and months until they finally started to dry up and desiccate and start to decompose. But they were there for everyone to see.
Wow. And people didn't clean it up?
No, no. My dad said he would not let us. My dad was really, really smart, Paul. He didn't know anything about Bigfoot or UFOs or anything like that, but he was super smart. And I remember we found that first dog in our field and told Dad what it looked like, because we took a stick and uh, examined that dog.
Hmm.
And we told him it was sliced open, not eaten on, sliced open with all the guts removed and the eyeballs and tongues removed. And he said, "Boys, I don't want y'all to get within 20 feet of one of those bodies from now on. Don't get within 20 feet of it."
Yeah.
Now, he didn't know anything about cattle mutilations that was happening out west at the same time, but it didn't really make the news, Paul. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They're not going to put that on there.
Yeah,
Well, that was back in the 70s too. They wouldn't.
right.
Yeah. Wow.
1975 is when all that happened.
Wow.
When we finally did leave that place, we moved back to the city. That wasn't all that we had happened there. The humanoid stuff. We had one night there was a terrific thunderstorm, and we got up the next morning, and all the mud puddles in the yard and in the driveway and all the roadside ditches, believe it or not, were filled with tropical fish. 3 different varieties of tropical fish. We had
Wow.
the regular goldfish type fish.
Yeah.
We had the angelfish with the long dorsal fins and the tail fins, black and stripes.
Right.
And also had the little what they call neons that you used to be able to buy at Walmart, right? But there
Right.
were just tens of thousands of each of these fish in the ditches and the swamps. And I'd never really thought to get a ladder and look up on the roof, but I have a feeling, and if I did, the roof would have been covered with them too. So that's called a skyfall in the Fortean circle. So lived through that, experienced that, and one day we was coming back from town, and me and my brother was in the back seat. We just got a comic book. We would get a comic book like once a month, right? Um, we was coming back. We was rounding a curve. There's some trees along the side of the road. And I just looked up at the sky, and I saw this big cloud bank open up. The middle of it just opened up into a perfect circle.
Hmm.
And inside that circle was a medieval type castle. And I could see it just plain as day. It had a spire on the right, a shorter spire on the left, and red pennants streaming from the point of each of those spires. And I could count the flagstones in the building. It was so clear, and I could see the front door. It was a wooden front door,
Right.
uh, rounded at the top like an archway, and gilded with uh, iron work around the edges in the middle. So yeah, so it wasn't just the Inhumanoids. A lot of things happened at that place, and uh,
And
as we
that
go,
palace
it's
that you
huge.
saw, that was in the sky.
Yes,
Wow.
yes, in the sky. And I turned to my brother Dean. I said, "Look, look." And he looked and he saw it too. So I know I wasn't just imagining something. We just it
Yeah.
didn't take me about 10 minutes to read a comic book, and we'd have ours read by the time we got halfway home. And so I know I wasn't imagining things, and I always thought, it was just some kind of vision. I never really knew how to interpret that. And a few years ago, actually about 15 years ago, I was talking to my best friend online. I had two best friends. They're now passed away, unfortunately. Mary Green, the Tennessee Bigfoot lady, and Linda Godfrey. I'm sure everybody's heard of Linda, but she was my most excellent friend. And she told me, she goes, Bart, that what you saw, I think it was a portal. And I'm like, well, you're probably right, Linda. Now that you mention it, it looked like an opening into another dimension for sure.
Yeah.
There was a castle up there. I'm sure I don't think there's any kind of castles like that down here on Earth, but you're probably right. It was probably a portal of some type. Now, why these things need portals and all that, I couldn't tell you, Paul, but I do believe that they exist because the neighbor down the road that my dad would call in emergencies, he would come down and he would watch the house in his free time. He was a fireman, and he would watch the house and look around. And he said, I never knew this 2 years later. After we left, I didn't get a good chance to talk to this man. It was my dad doing the talking and mom to him. But years later, in 2005, when I finally got a personal computer, the first thing I did was look up his contact information and contacted this man.
Mm-hmm.
And I introduced myself and asked him if he remembered me. He said, sure, I remember you. I remember your dad. I remember all that. And I got to talking to him, and he had seen creatures himself there. Not only the first one when he was out squirrel hunting, but when he was out looking around and checking things out. He said, there's a portal out there, Bart. I'm like, what? He said, there's a portal out there, and I've seen these things come in and out of this portal on three different occasions. I'm like, well, what did it look like? And he said, it looked like you know how the heat waves rise off a hot highway in the midsummer?
Yeah.
I said, yeah. He goes, that's exactly what it looked like. But these things stepped out of it and then stepped back into it and disappeared. So, yeah, a lot of crazy stuff happened in my life, Paul, and that was just the beginning, really. I went on to see a lot more stuff and experience a lot more stuff after we moved from that place as well. So,
Do you think this stuff followed you? It knew what it was doing to you guys, and it might have followed you?
well, I don't really know the answer to that question. I know that experiences happen to us and my family.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved back to the city for 10 years. And then we finally moved back to the country after 10 years. And I'll be damned if it all didn't start happening again. And this time we had heavy UFO activity outside, Black Panthers, Bigfoot. The inside of the house was haunted as could be. My brothers and sisters were seeing full body spectral apparitions. Just the craziest stuff happened, man. Every time we moved down to the river bottoms, then the craziest stuff happened. So I don't know if it was following us. It didn't follow us in town, but only when we went back to the country. So we left that house in 1989, and we didn't move back to the country at all after that.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a crazy time of my life, And,
Yeah.
from 1971 to 1989 was crazy. And the last. So another thing happened, and this happened in the next county over. Well, the next town over, Smith Mills, is right at the edge of Henderson County. This is all happened in Henderson County, Kentucky. And we had heard of this lake called Burbanks Lake, and
Mm-hmm.
we've heard about all our lives. And there's supposed to be monster bass in this lake, but it was posted. You couldn't get on there. You couldn't get on there to fish. And we all got together and decided one day, it was I think 1986 or 87, that we were going to sneak into this property, and it was this, on top of this big hill in between two old cemeteries way out in the country. So we're going to sneak onto this property and fish this lake. and we don't care if we have to go to jail to do it. So that's how much we love to fish.
That's
So,
dedication right there.
right. So we had a friend with a one-man bass boat. We were loading that bass boat up into the truck, and my other half brother Harold come over and he said, "What are y'all doing?" He said, "We're getting ready to go fishing." He said, "Where?" He said, "Burbanks Lake." He said, "No, you don't want to go there." I'm like, "Why, Bubba? I mean, that's where all the monster bass is. Haven't you heard?" He goes, "Yeah, I've heard." He said, "Me and my uh, uh, brother-in-law 10 years ago went fishing there, and there's something out there. Every time we want to go in, we was in a boat, and every time we try to bring the boat to the shore, he said the trees in the woods would just erupt with noises like elephants running around in there, and they had to push back out into the lake. They ended up spending the whole night in the middle of the lake and didn't get to leave till the next morning. But
Wow.
so we're like, oh well, we don't care, we just want the bass. And so we got there, and we didn't think this through at all. It was just like a spur of the moment kind of deal. We had that one man bass boat, and that was all we needed. So
Yeah.
we got our lures, and there was 5 or 6 of us that went. And we got to the lake, and got out of the truck and got the boat in the water. And unfortunately, there was a one man bass boat, so 2 people was the maximum limit that it would hold, right? So we'd either have to wait there on this side of the lake and let my brother ferry us to the other side of the lake, which is the part that we wanted to fish on, or we had to walk around the lake. Well, several of them said, "Well, we'll just wait here and you can come back and get us." It took 30 minutes to get over the other side of the lake with that little bitty boat, and 30 minutes back. And me and my little brother, my next youngest, Victor, we said, "Man, we're gonna wait here for no couple of hours. We're gonna just walk around the lake and go fishing." And my older brother Harold had warned us that it was plumb full of water moccasins, that place was, and he was right.
Mm-hmm.
So just on walking across on the edge of that lake, the periphery of that lake, to get to the spot we wanted to fish, we saw like 8 or 9 water moccasins. Now that's a deadly snake if you're in some situations. If you can't get to help, right, it could kill you.
Right.
So we got to where we was wanting to fish, and I remember this day so well, because usually we use live bait and bobbers, but this time we didn't have any money for minnows, so we had to use lures. And we were walking around the lake, and I was casting my lure, and I got it hung up in some tree limbs above me, and I jerked and wiggled on it several minutes and could not get the lure to break free. So I thought, well, my fishing's over with for the day. If I don't get this lure free, I'm not going to be able to fish. So I just started backing up. I was holding the pole really tightly, and I started backing up, and I figured the line would break, and that would be it for me. But all of a sudden, the lure got free of where it was tangled up at, and come and hit me right in the jaw right here, and stuck 2 of the treble hooks in my jaw. And there was, I could not get it out, and so everybody come over and was trying to get this doggone lure out of my face. Luckily, someone had thought to bring along a half a jug of kerosene, right? A half a milk jug of kerosene. I don't know who did it, but thank goodness they did. So we ended up, you think that the skin of your face is tender, right? But it's not. So like I never got the hook pushed through enough to snip the barb off of it to pull it out. But once they finally did, I just rubbed a little kerosene on it, and it never even scarred. We all went back to fishing, and it was starting to get dark. So my brother was like, "Okay, we're gonna have to head out now." So I'll start ferrying y'all back across the lake, and that's what he did. And he ferried one, and then come back and get another one, come back and get the other one, one at a time. And before you know it, it was pitch black dark. It was just me and my little brother Victor on the other side of that lake. And I scrambled to get some firewood. It just rained a couple of days before, and everything was really wet. So I got what I could and started a little meager fire there, with my kerosene. And Wasn't very big fire at all, just a pitiful little fire. But we could see, it threw off light, and we could see around us for a little ways. And it was over there all alone. I mean, it was dark black, it's pitch black. And suddenly we started hearing tree snaps and footsteps going all around us. I mean, loud. And at the first tree snap, we started paying attention because we knew what that sound meant, right? There's only one thing in the Kentucky woods that'll snap tree limbs coming at you. All the other animals are stealthy, right? But not Bigfoot. So we knew what it was, but all we had was a fishing pole. That's it, a piece. We didn't have a pocket knife. And so the sounds came closer and closer and closer, and it sounded like there was at least 3 or 4 of them because the sounds were all over us, all around us, all at once. And we thought, well, we're going to die. This is it. We're going to die tonight. But
I can't imagine the fear that was going through you guys.
Oh my goodness, it was terrible, Paul. But I thought to myself, I'm at least going to see what these things are. It's going to kill us. I want to see them up close because we saw them before in 1975. With one standing in a field quite a distance away, but it was taller than the corn, the full-grown corn. So I let the sounds get close, and I would throw a dash of that kerosene in the fire, and it would flare up. And we could see, I don't know, 50 or 60 feet at least around this, 50 or 60 foot radius. And there was nothing there. So we didn't hear any other sounds at all. No breathing, no growls, nothing. Just these immense, heavy footsteps with breaking limbs. It sounded like it would break limbs and knock over trees every time that it stepped. And this was going on all around us. So the firelight would die back down. As soon as I'd throw the kerosene in the fire, the sounds would stop. But when the firelight died back down, then the sounds came again. And I would let them get closer and closer and closer each time. And I would throw a dash of kerosene in that fire. And the very last time I did that, I only had one little shot of kerosene left. I let the sounds get within 10 feet of us, Paul. 10 feet, that's very, very close for an animal. And I threw that kerosene in the fire, and there was nothing there. We could see nothing. And the firelight died, and the sounds, here they come again. And I told Victor, I said, we're going to have to swim for it, Bella. Either that or these things are going to get us.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, let's go. Let's do it. So I picked up the only fire we had left was like an inch or 2 tall little flame at the end of a stick. And I held it out in front of us as we backed down toward the lake. And we got down to the lake, and the sounds followed us all the way down there, even where there were no trees. So I know that what was happening, there wasn't really breaking trees and limbs and all this stuff. It was they were either making that sound themselves, or it was an artificially induced auditory hallucination, right?
Yeah.
So we get down to the lake, and I'm holding this little stick with a tiny flame at the end of it. And I said, are you ready, Bubba? He goes, yeah, I'm ready. And about that time, we heard my brother say, hey, what's going on over there? He said, hurry up. You got to come get us. So we got the boat there. And the first thing he said when the boat touched the shore, he said, okay, which one's next? And I said, which one's next? We're both next. He said, oh, no way, Bubba. This boat won't hold 3 people. It barely holds 2. And I said, well, if it don't hold 3 people, all 3 of us will be swimming across this lake because ain't nobody staying over here. You don't know what's going on over here. So I said, Victor, you get on the back, and I laid across the bow of it, and we were about a 1/4 inch away from swamping that boat, and it took an hour to get across that lake. But we were never so grateful as to get back to the car as we were that night.
Oh my God!
Right there.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I mean, even if you all didn't get on the boat, I would have turned into an Olympic swimmer.
Right. We were ready. We were ready, Paul. And the funny thing is, I was the only one that caught a fish that day, and it was just a little 2-pound largemouth. The place with the monster fish was we found the monsters, but not the fish. So we never went back there.
Wow. No. Yeah. Yeah. I can't blame you. I wouldn't go back there either. Um, but my God, and you never saw anything.
Never saw anything whatsoever. And that's how I was introduced to the cloaking aspect of Bigfoot. And I knew that it was real.
Yeah.
And the people who make fun of that and they ridicule people who say that, and you better check yourself because they're telling you the truth. This happened to me again in the broad daylight with different people. We were fishing one autumn on the Green River.
Yeah.
And it was me and my best friend and his wife and my wife. And we were spread out with bobbers uh, about 20 feet along the bank there. And it was cold, and it was leaves were on the ground up above us on in the forest floor, and we were down on the riverbank, about 12 feet below the forest floor. It sloped down. We weren't getting any bites. Got kind of boring, So I reached down behind me and picked up a dirt clod, and I just tossed it over at the girls, and I made sure it had plenty of arch that I had enough time to turn back around where they wouldn't see me, right? So when the time the dirt clod hit, I'd already be turned around fishing, and they say, "Oh, what was that? What was that? Was that you, Barton?" I'm like, "What? What are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. I didn't throw no dirt clod at you, And
Yeah.
I was just messing with the girls that way, and I did it 4 or 5 times, and they started to get really nervous. So I thought, well, I'm gonna do it one more time and let them see me do it, and that way, everything will be cool. So I did it again, and instead of turning around, I just stayed facing them. And when they looked up, there was me with this uh, grin on my face, and they started cussing me, of course, And
It was
uh,
all worth it, though. I bet, though.
it was all working, yeah. But when that happened, another dirt clod came from above us on the above the riverbank, and it landed in the same spots that my dirt clods were landing.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as the dirt clod hit, I knew it had to be a man or up there. I figured it was one of my other brothers that had came and found out where we were fishing and was pulling a joke on us or whatever. And as soon as the dirt clod landed, I jumped up and started scrambling up that bank to see who it was, right? And as soon as I
Mm-hmm.
moved, the first step took a step in those dead leaves up there. I'm scrambling up the bank. It takes another step, and then one more step, and I'm almost to the top of the bank. And at the fourth step, my eyes became level with the top of that riverbank, and I had a good visual. I could see a good distance away, and there was nothing up there, Paul. And me
Wow.
and my buddy Dave, we immediately ran up there and started looking, searching there, but there was nobody there. And whatever it was took 4 steps and disappeared completely. I mean, vanished from the area, because if it was still there, we would have accidentally ran into it. We searched the area so good. And so, yeah, that was the second time that I experienced the cloaking of these Bigfoot creatures. So it is
Mm-hmm.
real. I don't know how they do it, but they can do it. And when people tell you that, you need to not try not to judge them, right?
Right.
Because they're probably telling you the truth.
I haven't heard many Bigfoot stories since I've started doing this. I've heard a few,
Yeah,
and everything, every story that I've heard has something being thrown.
really.
And when you were saying about throwing stuff at the girls and then laughing and everything,
Mm-hmm.
I had a feeling that something was going to happen like that. And it is I don't even know how to go about this. I mean, do they do this? Are they throwing stuff at us too to get our
Yeah.
attention?
Well, for what this was mimicking me is what it was doing, and
Yeah.
it wasn't scary. It wasn't trying to scare us. I don't think that time. Whereas the first time, yeah, it scared the crap out of me and my little brother. We thought we were going to die, but
Yeah.
this time it wasn't. It was more like a prank, right?
Yeah.
It just saw me pranking the girls, and it did the same thing. And then when I got up to look for it, it didn't want to be seen, so it went somewhere else. And just in the blink of an eye, now I don't know how much of an outdoorsman you are, Paul, but
Not much.
when it comes to tracking an animal,
Hmm.
there's easiest way, of course, is in mud. But
Yeah.
the second easiest way is in dead leaf fall. So it's
Really.
all a matter of getting low enough. Your perspective is low enough so you can see the disturbed leaves. And if you do it that way, you can track a squirrel through the dead leaves. So it's a plainly obvious path that these things take, and plainly obvious uh, footsteps that evidence that they leave behind. But
Hmm.
I looked for footprints, the 4 footprints that I heard, and I could not find them, man. So
Wow.
I don't know what was going on there, but whatever it was not of this well, dimension, I guess you could
Yeah.
say.
So I
Not
don't
of
know what
well,
I'm more impressed with, the rock throwing or whatever it was throwing, or the cloak. I mean, the invisibility of it. I don't know what's more impressive
it's definitely
or scary,
the
actually.
invisibility. Now, if you just think about it, Paul, if you have the ability to become invisible to the human eye, what limitations do you have? What boundaries do you have? Right? You don't have to stay
Yeah.
out in the remote wilderness where you know no one's going to see you, and that's not what these things want anyway. They want to be seen. There's so much undisturbed wilderness in Kentucky alone that 10,000
Yeah.
of these creatures could disappear here and never be seen by any human being ever,
Wow.
if that's what they wanted. But
Yeah.
that's not what they want. They want to be seen. They uh, they hang around the edges of civilization.
Hmm.
And how many times have you heard this? Drivers out driving down a lonely country road at night when suddenly some big hairy creature steps in front of a car and steps in those high beams and then keeps moving and goes on to the next side of the road, right? Now, if you're such a smart creature as these things are, that can evade human capture or avoid being killed by any means, natural or otherwise,
Right.
and you have such a high intelligence level, then you're just gonna stay where you are until that car passes, and then cross that road when the car passes, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, no one will ever see you. But these things choose to step out in front of those headlights. So think about that. These are not shy, reclusive creatures. These are creatures that are proclaiming their existence to mankind, and they've been doing it for decades, if not
Yeah.
centuries. So, yeah, and every time you watch a show about Bigfoot or something,
Hmm.
they always start out with something like deep in the remote wilderness of wherever. That's not where these things are, man. These
No.
things are where people are.
Yeah. So there's a park maybe 5-10 miles from here, where I live. It's called Cliff Cave Park, and it's right off the Mississippi. And there's like a 5 mile trail that I used to run. Um, and I found out just recently that there has been Bigfoot sightings there. So,
Right?
and there's, I mean, yeah, there's wooded area by the river and everything, but up on the bluffs above that, there's some really big homes up there. So it's not like they're in deep forest. There's
Exactly.
humans living right there. So yeah.
Yeah, they come to where the people are. And
Yeah.
these things in Spotsville, the Kentucky river bottoms are endless,
Hmm.
basically endless. We live right in between the Green River and the Ohio River. So you have miles and miles of uninterrupted river bottoms. And these things could have went about their way, and whatever it is that they do, they could have done it and we would have never saw them. But they chose to be seen, and they chose to come up. They
Yeah.
chose to dump their kills in our yard or in our fields, and it's uh it's plainly obvious. But maybe not to everyone, but I've had 50 years to think about all this stuff, Paul, and that's given me quite a bit of a head start on most of the people in this field today.
Hmm.
So I've come to certain conclusions that these things are not all the time physical. They can be physical
Hmm.
when they want to be. They can leave hair, they can leave poop, they can eat. They have fully functional physical bodies. But when they do not want to be physical, then they can stop being physical and they can just go into some other other where. Now, to me, it's I don't necessarily feel that it's prudent to go bringing in all this quantum science and quantum physics. To me, I'm satisfied with just knowing that two dimensions exist. That's the physical dimension that we're in, and the spiritual dimension, which they're in. Now, they can cross over into ours with fully functional bodies, but when they want to go back, it's just that easy for them. So, however they do that, I think that's what's going on there.
Do you believe that they can be peaceful around humans and communicate with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, why would they do that though? So I believe the ones that are being peaceful uh, are fooling people, right? And I can only go by my own experiences, Paul. Everyone else, like I'm telling you my story, I know in my heart that everything I'm telling you are facts, but to you, it's just your opinion on whether or not I'm telling the truth or not, right? So the ones that are being nice and gifting and doing helping people, and I've talked to so many people it all started out that way, really innocent and harmless, but it ended up something very different. And I always tell people who tell me that, oh, I'm gifting these Bigfoot and they're so nice. I'll tell them don't trust them. In the end, they'll show their true faces, and you're not going to like what you see.
Yeah.
So I think it's a ruse. And I have good friends that really believe that there's some good Bigfoot out there. But as for me and my own personal experiences that I know to be fact, they're not good at all. So all the other, I know what the ones that I got to interact with and experience, I know they were bad. So all the others are at least uh, guilty by suspicion, association. You know what I mean? It's until proven otherwise. That's the way I look at it, and I don't think any of them are really truly friendly to man.
Right. Kind of
Sometimes
like
but it's an act.
yeah. I mean, kind of like one person ruins everything for everybody else. I mean, there could be good people in this world. There are good people in this world, and
Sure. Isn't
one
bad.
person has to do something stupid, and they have to shut something down, something like that. But
Yeah.
there was a comment on here by Spooktator Bob. He lived in Rock Castle or by the Rock Castle River, and several years ago, there were people from Ohio vacationing and witnessed a Bigfoot. I don't know
Yeah.
much about it, but that's yeah.
Well, here's the thing, Paul. So in 2005, 30 years after the Spotsville incident,
hmm
I get a computer and I look up this fellow's phone number and I start talking to him. And he started describing these creatures that he saw down there, stepping out of these portals, right?
hmm
And they're not the same creatures as what my family was seeing.
Yeah.
So what my family was seeing was a typical Bigfoot description, right? Ape human uh, hybrid, if you will.
Yeah.
But what he was seeing had long hair, long fangs, a short muzzle, and long claws. No visible ears. So I don't really know what that was. I know what it was that we saw, but what he saw, uh, don't really know. But it proves to me that these Inhumanoids work together. For whatever reasons, they're not out there fighting each other, ripping each other's heads off, as some of these crazy people have been saying. They work together to accomplish something. And I always kept my eyes peeled for another incident uh, where we have two different Inhumanoids working together. And it took me 40 over 40 years before I heard of someone who was claiming that. And that was Martin Groves,
hmm
who saw two Bigfoot working together with a dog man down in Land Between the Lakes. So of course I had to get in touch with Martin, and
Yeah.
uh, we become fast friends, and the rest really is history. But yeah, these things work together. They're not enemies. They don't fight each other and kill each other. And people who say stuff like that are just looking for attention and
hmm
they're out there doing this for all the wrong reasons. I'm just trying to bring the truth to the people and tell them what I know to be fact. And whether they believe me or not, that's up to them. I have no control over that. But as long as I tell the truth, and I can lay down at night and sleep like a baby, knowing that I've done my part to try to help people learn from this mystery that's been going on for hundreds of years.
Yeah. Here, one thing that I've learned, and I've talked to people, my whole life and everything, and interviews and stuff like that. And one thing that I've learned about people who aren't telling the truth is their story always changes. I mean, they might be missing one little fact, or add something else that not necessarily sound right. But most of I don't want to say all of them, but most of the people that I have come across on this platform have very consistent stories. Nothing changes.
Right.
Yours was one of them.
I haven't changed a word of my story since 1975, and I never will, because what I'm telling you is all true.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to tell it, right? I don't have to worry about remembering any details at all that might be contrary to what I've already stated, because I've never stated anything but the truth. And it's right there for me to pick right out of my head every time I want to tell these stories. And you'll know that they don't change. They've never changed, and they never will. But it's not like every time I tell this story, be like, there's something I've never told anyone before.
Yeah.
I just remembered this. No.
I
remember it all. And there's nothing that I'm holding back from the people. And a lot of times that works against me, because I've seen so much here in Henderson County. I've seen things that swim in the water, in the rivers. I've seen the things that walk on two legs like men. And I've seen things that fly in the sky. I've seen so many UFOs that I've lost count, and I hardly pay attention anymore.
Yeah.
And just like everybody else here, you once or twice a year, you'd get a little snippet on the news about somebody seeing a UFO. It's a public interest, piece on the news. But now they don't even do that. And
no.
One time I saw what looked like a pterodactyl flying through the sky. Smith Mills, just below the hill that me and my brother were surrounded. This was 1998. So it was me and another person was in the car, and a tornado had just come through a couple days before, and we're down in the river bottoms next to the Highland Creek area, SLU's Wildlife Management. And we're just riding along, and the girl in the car says, "Well, look over here. Who's this guy I think he is? The Red Baron or something?" And the gravel road is rutted and soft from all the rain, and limbs are laying helter skelter on the road that's falling down from the trees. And I didn't really pay no attention to her, right? I just thought, it's an ultralight or something like that. We have people that like to fly ultralights here. And then a couple seconds later, she goes, "Well, what the heck is this, hang glider or something?" Well, Henderson, Kentucky is flat. There's nowhere to take off in a hang glider, so we don't have any hang gliders around here. And she said something else, and I finally decided to stop ignoring her and just look out her window. I'm sitting there driving, and I just look over like that. And as soon as I did it, I realized the very first sight of this thing that wasn't no ultralight or airplane. She thought it might be an airplane. It was a bird of some type. And I only got 2 or 3 quick glances, because it was coming down from the sky, and like it was getting ready to land in one of the treetops. And on the third glance, it veered over to its right, which took it away, going away from me. And it had a 20-foot wingspan, real long, slender, skinny wings. And I remember thinking to myself, how in the world is it flying with those skinny wings? And no feathers, just wrinkly skin, right, like an elephant, but only solid red. It had a little band of hair above each ankle. It had the feet of an eagle. but nothing else was like an eagle. It had a short, stout, powerful looking neck and the short, stout beak. And the woman who saw it was in the car with me. She got to see it really well, and I just got 2 or 3 quick glances. But when I said it's a bird, she said, "Oh my God!" And she realized what she was seeing. It was almost like her brain couldn't digest what it or comprehend what her eyes were seeing. And she said it had a large bony protrusion at the top of its head, and the tail was like a snake, only it was curled up under it.
Wow.
So yeah, so I figured, well, I'm gonna, I've got to see this thing up close because it looked like it was landing, and the field it was above the treetops was about maybe 300 feet wide. And so I start to pull over to the road, and she says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to go see this thing." She goes, "Are you crazy? Are you crazy? This thing could eat you alive." And she was right. I didn't even have a stick with me that day, Paul.
Yeah.
I didn't have swords and spears and stuff back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured, well, this time she's right, and so I stopped, and I did not go into those woods after that thing. But um, that whole area there, Geneva, it's a part of the outskirts of Geneva, which is a little burg in Henderson County, just full of UFO reports, water monster reports,
Yeah.
Bigfoot reports, a couple of dogman reports here in Henderson County. So this, to me, Henderson County is actually the mecca of all inhumanoid activity. And you would think, why? What makes Henderson so special?
Yeah.
If you wanted to see Bigfoot, most people think you have to go to the Pacific Northwest or Washington or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's Kentucky. Kentucky is the dark and bloody ground, and it's the only state that the Indians nicknamed such. And they did that for a reason. It's because all the spirits here, just so many ghosts and spirits and unexplained things that's happened here, violence throughout its history. It's
Yeah.
really a unique place, and we have the largest natural underground cavern system in the world, right here in central Kentucky. That's Mammoth Caves in Edmonson County, and there's no telling what lives down there, Paul. They've already discovered over 460 miles of underground passages, and they estimate that they have at least 600 more to discover. So
1,000 miles of underground passage.
right.
That's incredible. In one state.
In one state, right.
That is incredible. I mean, God knows what's all living under there. I mean, holy cow.
Right. There's no telling. I've taken one report from South Central Kentucky of these smaller type Bigfoot that were chasing cows and trying to kill a cow, and they were covered in mud. And I know because I've explored a lot of those caves down there, and most of the openings to the caves over the centuries have mud and rock have slid in there, right? So you have to crawl on your belly to get into most of these caves, and when you stand up, you're covered in mud. And when they told me these things were covered in mud, I knew that they were from the cave system. So I call that those things Littlefoot, and it's in Spruce, Kentucky. Yeah, I wrote about that, and they didn't have regular human type feet with 5 toes, but rather cloven hoof type feet.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah.
I would love to, I've never really been claustrophobic before, but lately in the last maybe 5-10 years, I've kind of developed claustrophobia.
Yeah.
But I would
Me
love to go
too.
down there
Me too.
and visit those caves, but I
Right.
don't
I
know
used to
what to
go
do.
in those caves without a second thought, Paul, but now I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, what if I get stuck in one of those caves and can't get out? And maybe there's a little earthquake or tremor or something that shifts the openings. And, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't think I would do it anymore, Paul.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did all this stuff in my younger days. And now that I'm 57, I think I'm a lot smarter than I was back then and a lot less reckless.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Same here. One thing I want to ask you about is land between the lakes out there in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Um, you're there a lot, I understand.
hmm Yeah. So Land Between the Lakes is probably the one of the scariest places in Kentucky, the creepiest places at night, if not the creepiest. In
Yeah.
the daytime, it's so beautiful, and majestic and tranquil, but at nighttime, it's like a nightmare. And we have this creature down there that's allegedly attacking and killing people, and it's been going on. Who knows how long it's been going on? I talked to this one person whose mother and father saw this thing back in 1945. So that's 15 years before the government came in and confiscated all the land using eminent domain and took it all over and started doing whatever they wanted to do with it. But yeah, this it's supposed to be a dog man or a werewolf type creature, and I've heard stories about it for years and years and years. I've been down there several times. Me and my wife Letitia. Uh, there's a certain spot that's allegedly the attack site where 4 people were killed in 1982, and we camped right on that site 2 different times. Primitive camping, um, grilling steaks and frying bacon, and doing everything we could to get something to take notice and happen, but nothing ever did.
I'd
The
come running
last
for bacon.
right, the last summer I was down there with Martin Groves and Daryl Denton and Ron Moorhead, and we were staying at Wrangler's Campground. And the 2 nights I was there, as soon as everyone went to sleep but me, we were in a cabin right beside a creek, and I mean, stuff started happening, man, left and right, and I'm like, what in the world? So I walked down to the creek and shine my flashlight, couldn't see nothing, and I'd go back up next to the campfire, and there'd just be a huge calamitous noise coming out of there, and I'm like, oh wow, maybe I should get up on the porch with the porch light. So that's what I did, and the noise would still come out, and that's the only time I've ever had to draw my sword
Hmm.
down there at Land Between the Lakes was that night. So of course I woke Daryl and Martin up. Indiana. That's what we call Ron Moorhead because he's like the real life Indiana Jones. He didn't wake up, but Daryl and I went looking all over that place for these things and never saw them. And not surprising considering the fact that they can turn completely invisible. But the next day we found some evidence that they were there in the form of pushed down saplings.
Yeah.
It was in that creek, and I first thought it was a horse in there. Those were Wrangler's Campground, which is a campground for the horse riders, right? And I thought a horse might have gotten away and was walking down that creek, but horses, they're not going to do that. They're not going to stay in one spot if they're running away. They're going to probably wouldn't get in that creek at all. They would probably try to jump it. But yeah, so and the last time we was there with Martin Groves, we were driving around waiting for brother Daryl, to come back from taking Ron to Nashville,
Hmm.
and we've been driving around for 2 or 3 hours and walking the old trails, and looking for stuff. Never seen anything, but coming back to Wrangler's Campground, we turned into the road that leads to the check-in station, and there's some woods right there on the right, and I saw something step up into those woods. Now, I don't know what it was. I didn't see it good enough to make a positive identification of it, but it had the legs of a dog. And the color, I first thought it was a deer, but it struck me that the color was way off for a deer. It had
Yeah.
the color of a Doberman Pinscher, uh, black with tan spots. And I've never seen a deer look like that. So Martin feels sure it was a beast of LBL. Um, I can't say that with any authority because I didn't see enough of it to know. But another time we were there, and my wife saw something, and 2 of her friends, and another one of my brothers, my wolf brothers. Now we have a little club called the Brotherhood of the Wolf,
Hmm.
and it's like a secret club. Not really a secret, but the only way you can get into this brotherhood is to come to Land Between the Lakes and hunt the beast with me. Because, Paul, there comes a time when you get tired of hearing the stories, and they're being told by these big tough ex-Marines, ex-Navy SEALs, ex-police officers, ex-whatever. But all they do is talk, and they don't. It's like they're okay with the fact that women and children are being attacked, killed, or coming up missing down there, and I'm not okay with that. So uh, I take my sword and I try to go out there and find one of these things to kill it. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a pistol too. You're not allowed to take firearms in there, but I wouldn't advise going in there without a way to defend yourself or protect yourself. But if I ever do see one of these things, it's going to have 6 bullet holes in it. And if that don't do it, which I don't think it will, and I have a 3-foot sword that's razor sharp and will cut the front end off of your truck. It's not something that you put on the wall to display. It's an actual real sword. And I have another one that's even bigger. And I think that if the bullet hole doesn't stop them, then chopping off parts of their anatomy should, right? And I just want to get down there and kill one and put its head up in a tree as a warning to the others down there to stop killing innocent women and children and stop feeding on people down here. This is my state, Kentucky, and I don't like that at all. And I'm just trying to do something about it, right? I'm not trying to be a modern day Van Helsing or something silly like that. I'm not trying to be anybody other than Barton Nunnelley. And you don't see me with TV crews behind me every time I go down there. Now, if I wanted that, I could make that happen because I'm getting contacted once a week at least by somebody from network TV wanting me to do this or do that, and I'm not interested. I'm just not interested. I've done enough TV to know it's not real. It's a pain in the rump, and eventually you have to do what they say. So I'm not going to be beholden to anybody. I'm going to do what I think I have to do, and that's what I'm trying to do, Paul. Nothing more, nothing less. I give my word to Wolf Brother 2.5 years ago that if anything ever happened to him, that I would do my best to carve his initials and his wife's initials, who had just passed before he did, into the dead carcass of one of these creatures. So I'm just trying to keep my word and send a message to the creatures down there. So hopefully the good Lord will let that happen one day. But I've been going down there for 2 years now with my swords, and that's my sole intentions is to kill one of these things. But so far, nothing's happened.
I would not want to be one of those creatures when you come looking for them.
Well, everybody said, well, they see your edge blades, they see your spears, they see your swords, and they don't want anything to do with that. So I tested that theory. The last 3 times I went, I left Nightmare and Splinter, which is my sword and spear, and Midnight. That's my big sword. I left them in the car, and I went out with just a flashlight and a cell phone. That's it. Still nothing. So I don't know. I asked the good Lord to take these Inhumanoids out of my life back in 2007, and he did. I haven't had any problems at all since then, but I find myself put in a situation where I'm trying to find them now, or at least one. Yeah, that's Splinter and Nightmare, my sword. Wow. So that's what I'm down there with. I don't have fancy cameras. I have my tomahawk there on my side, and I have edged weapons. I think that's going to do the trick if I ever get a chance to use them. I don't think bullets will kill these things. So
yeah, and you just said it. In regards to the big TV crews and as opposed to YouTube channels and stuff, that's just big Hollywood production. Their reactions, it might all be true and everything that they're finding, but their reactions are just over the top for ratings and stuff.
Right. Well, I learned in 2009, my first experience with network television, Monster Quest. I was on an episode of Monster Quest. I learned that reality TV is not reality.
No,
it's just TV.
It's what the networks want to be seen,
Yes,
to make them the most money possible.
exactly. They're there to make a show. They're not there to prove anything or get
Mm-hmm.
any evidence or do anything but make a television show that people will watch.
Yeah.
So that's not my course, that's not my path. I have friends who like to do that, and more power to them, but
Mm-hmm.
my path leads the opposite direction of that. And
Mm-hmm.
my path is to the truth only. And you're not going to find that on network cable TV. You're not going to find the truth hardly anywhere, right? There's just a few of us out there that even know the truth to tell someone. And
Right.
luckily, I think that I'm one of them, and I'm just out here doing what I think is right and trying to make a difference. I'm not trying to be popular. In fact, the truth of it all is the most unpopular truth you could ever offer anyone. And that truth being that it's all biblical. It all comes down to the fight between good and evil, Satan and God. And two there's two beings waiting at the bottom of this rabbit hole that everybody keeps talking about. Oh, I'm really going down a rabbit hole on this one. Well, there's two things waiting for you at the bottom of that rabbit hole. If you make it that far, Paul, that's God and Satan. That's it.
Mm.
Everything else is of them.
Yeah, I agree. And somebody said it here. Where was it? Here.
I want to make it clear that God, to me, there's ever only been one God. That's Yahweh God and His Son Jesus.
Yeah.
So, which are parts of the same God. Everybody kind of gets tripped up on this. Let us make man in our image, with the plural tense of the word. Well, they have to realize that there's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And when He talks about Himself, sometimes it's acceptable to me to use the plural form, right? Plus, all the angels were made before we were made. So, yeah, that's I'm talking about Yahweh God and no other. There is no other God. There's only one true, living, eternal God, and His name is Yahweh.
And I'll getting back to the TV shows. The one thing I'll watch on them is the beginning part of the shows where they give the history of whatever location they're at.
Yeah,
that's the interesting part. Everything else, like what Holly said, everything else is scripted, and
right.
I'll stick to podcasts. Yeah,
Right, there you go. At least you have a chance of telling the truth. But I talked to the producer for Monster Quest for 3 months, and we had this big plan, and I had the location too, Paul. I could have. And I told Doug Hadjusek this not too long ago. We became friends. He's the one who created that show, and I had the active location down at a river camp that the people were seeing these things almost every single time they were there. I had them right there. We were supposed to spend 3 days there. We spent 30 minutes there. And when the producer come, I met her at the hotel. She held up this piece of paper, the list of shots, the camera shots that they needed. And she goes, when we get these shots, we're leaving. We're done. I'm like, oh, hold it just a minute. We agreed to spend 3 days at this location to try to actually get some evidence of Bigfoot. She said, no, we're just getting these. This is the only thing we wanted, these shots. So I should have just walked away from the project right then, and knowing how it would end up. But I went through with it, and it's once you're on TV one time, Paul, it's no big deal, right?
Yeah.
But some people would sell their own mother for the chance to be on TV. Like that's the pinnacle of success that you can achieve in this field. To me, the pinnacle of success in this field is finding the truth, finding the answers that everyone's looking for, and sharing the answers with people. And that way you can help people. You can actually help people. Getting your own TV show, that's not helping anyone but you and the network. So yeah, I've been offered that and turned it down so many times. I always tell anybody, if there's any networks out here watching this show, please save your time. And don't bother reaching out to me because I'm not interested in what you're selling.
Yeah, and helping people get the truth out there and helping people tell their story and get that off their chest so they're not ridiculed anymore. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And luckily, things are not like they were in the 70s and 80s at all, Paul. So back in the 70s and 80s, maybe even early 90s, if you come out and said the truth of what you saw, You could lose your job. You could lose your family. Some people even were driven to commit suicide, lost their lives by coming forward. But now
Yeah.
it's different. There's not so much repercussions, negative repercussions of coming forward and telling what you've seen.
And there's a lot more safe spaces, safe places to share your story.
And
Yeah.
indeed, there is.
Yeah.
And yeah,
You know, as
you know,
much.
not only you guys come check us out. If you have an encounter that's true, I'd be more than happy to speak with you. And if you need answers to some questions, I can do that to you for you as well to the best of my
There
ability.
you go.
I'm not
There you
perfect.
go.
I'm not an expert at anything but house painting. Excuse me. So I'm a painting contractor by it's my job, and everything I've ever accomplished in this paranormal field has been on my spare time and no money. So
Yeah.
maybe that'll change one day, and I can do this full time. But I think I've already arrived at the correct answers to the puzzles, and now I'm just here to, like you say, help people get their experiences off their chests and off their minds and out into the open, and sharing the truth with people, the truths that I found myself. And everything else is just an opinion, except for what you experience yourself, as a fact, right?
Exactly. And you have the right to believe or not believe what you hear,
Sure.
but
Truth
just
sticks
know
where
the
it's
people
supposed to
that.
stick, and it slides right off where it's not supposed to. So
Yeah.
that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. So there you see on the bottom of the screen, there's Barton's YouTube page. Make sure you head over there for excellent content, and subscribe to his channel. It's, I mean, you do an awesome, fantastic job over there.
Well,
And
thanks, man. I
Barton,
appreciate that. I'm just a
I
beginner. I never had any dreams that I would be doing this. Never had any aspirations that I would be on YouTube or speaking publicly or any of that stuff.
mhm.
I'm a private person, and but God has put me here, and I'm going to make the most of it while I'm here.
And you're doing a hell of a job, and doing a hell of a service for so many people.
Well, thanks. I
To,
appreciate that, Paul. I
to
really do.
yeah. So Barton, thank you so much for coming on here. This has been an incredible night. I hope everybody has enjoyed this as much as I have. Your stories are incredible. It's
Well, thanks.
I wish I hadn't waited this long to meet you. And I'm very, very happy that I did. This has just been an incredible
So
night. I
much.
appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Paul, and I want to say hello to everybody out there that's listening, and uh, everybody take care and be kind to one another. It doesn't cost anything to be nice and be kind, and
Exactly.
God bless each and every one of you.
And everybody in the chat, I appreciate you all for being here. All the nice comments that you guys have had. I've didn't get a whole lot of a chance to put things up on the screen. I mean, talking to Barton, it's hard to do other things besides listen. And it's an incredible story. So, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Make sure you tune into Barton's show on Wednesday nights. Correct?
Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Central Time. Yes.
8 p.m. Central Time. I get all you guys, all your shows. I can never keep them straight.
Right. Well, we
Anyway,
have a bunch of truthers out here now, Paul, and we're finally uh, overturning the false narratives that the apers have been giving everyone for 60 or 70 years. And, they haven't taken one single step forward in all this time. They just chased their tails and telling everybody these things are big monkeys, and
mhm,
they're not. They're just not. So
yeah.
luckily, the truth is coming forward, and everything else is taking a back seat now. And I'm so happy to be here to see it, to see that happen. Yeah.
And you're one of the leaders of the charge there. So,
Well, thank you. I
all righty,
appreciate
guys.
that.
Everybody, you be safe out there. Take care, and I will see you on the next episode of Paranormal Among Us.